Robert Cole, founder of RockCheetah and one of my comrades at PhocusWire. You're one of our esteemed analysts. Thank you very much, Rob, for joining us on this episode of PhocusWire Pulse, where we're talking about digital marketing in travel. And I think what we wanted to do particularly with you was learn a little bit about what are some of the tactics from a marketing perspective and distribution perspective that brands are doing to kind of wean themselves away from some of their existing or previous business models, for want of a better phrase. And we know that you've got some interesting kind of perspective on this. But before we kind of dive into those new business models, I think it's worth just kind of having, if possible, kind of a rough history on travel brands and their reliance on Google for marketing purposes. You know, what's worked, what hasn't worked, first of all, and then we can kind of go from there.
Sure. No, it's great. Thanks for having me on. It's interesting. I think for most brands across travel, across all industries, they would much prefer to just get direct business, right? Cool. And that's great. Eliminate all sorts of distribution costs and any sort of affiliate programs and things like that. But that's just not practical. They don't have the scale and efficiency to be able to capture that entire market at a cost-effective rate. So what Google has done very, very effectively, and I'll use really hotel, our time's limited, so really talk about hotels in particular, but the evolution of, say, Google hotel ads. With all of Google, it started with these 10 blue links, right? And there wasn't advertising. It was just Google's algorithm that kind of elevated content, things like that. But then things evolved, there was AdWords, and all of a sudden there was pay-per-click. One thing for travel brands across the thing, a lot of them complain, they hate when I say this, so they complain about commissions, but they love commissions because commissions reduce risk. You only pay on delivered business, where, you know, pay-per-click is risky. If, you know, you're paying for these clicks, people click and then they don't convert, you can rack up a lot of cost without anything being produced. And again, that cost is against a budget that you've got to maintain, where on commission, it kind of comes out as a cost of sale, and nobody really says we're going to stop paying commissions because we're selling too much. So it works very, very well for the travel industry. So in the case of hoteliers and the Google hotel ads, Google then shifted to a pay per stay or commission basis. And you can do it either way, whatever works for you. If you have a pay-per-click budget, that works. And that's great. I mean, very, very nice innovation by Google to be more friendly to the industry and to be able to work their way, but still get paid by the industry. And then really more recently, what they've done is interesting with free booking links. So before, it was kind of a pay to play, and Google did a very good job, again, particularly in hotels, kind of unifying its Maps platform with its Google My Business platform, with the advertising platform. So everything's kind of working together. And also perhaps the potential for government intervention and regulation may have popped up in certain discussions, but they decided to say, hey, you know what, you can have free booking links for the hoteliers. And the hoteliers went, wow, this is great. We can suddenly not just have this toll gate on our business where somebody searches for the hotel under Google, and here comes this nice little section over on the side, which isn't really the blue links anymore, but a nice thing that says, oh, here's all these things about the hotels and reviews and photos and all sorts of great stuff. All of a sudden, they can have their listing there. All you have to do is provide rates and inventory, that sort of thing. But Google also has some rules around this, which are, you'd better not do something where, say, it's a low rate here, and then when they click through to your landing page, all of a sudden it's a higher rate, or they don't convert. That's not going to, you're going to get kind of pushed down in this. But Google basically has two areas now on these hotel ads. They'll have ads at the top, and it says ads very clearly. And then it says, here are other listings. And the hotels that don't pay get into the other listings a little bit lower. But then it really comes down to the bottom line is pricing. right? And it's a meta search. So if you look at some things you might see, and this is very, very common, a hotel says, oh, the rate is $159 or something like that. And then you'll see, oh, here it is through an OTA for $119. And in that case, the hotels, that's now a challenge of rate parity. And that's a whole different rabbit hole that can run down.
It really is, yeah.
but with that, the hotels decided to play a little game by saying, we don't like this. Rate parity was keeping the pricing consistent everywhere. And the hotels wanted that initially. And then they thought they could get tricky by lowering their price on their own site versus the brands or versus the major OTAs. But they may not have realized the OTAs can play that game as well now.
So, well, I think what's quite interesting is that we are, and we're going to get to this in a second, Robert, but, we're seeing the emergence of different tactics and business models, as you've called them before we started recording. I mean, is it a kind of a perfect storm of different things that are coming together that have driven the emergence of these new things? Or is it just that the time is right? Or is it a COVID-related thing? What's going on?
A pandemic's a terrible thing to waste, right? So isn't that how the saying goes? So there has been some innovation, and there was innovation before, but I think the pandemic really struck it when demand evaporates. What do you really do to come out of that? And I think the big one was probably TripAdvisor Plus.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a second. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there have been subscription models before, and there have been, particular sales and things like that. But I think the big thing that's really happening is that certainly in terms of advertising on Google during the pandemic, it dropped radically. I mean, the billions that were being spent by the OTAs, it dropped precipitously. But again, it's being very intelligent with that spend. Yes, they are coming back, but they're doing it very judiciously. They don't want to start bidding on a lot of things where the hotel markets are full and there's no inventory. Why? You aren't going to convert the sale and you aren't going to have any return on your ad spend. So yeah, there's a lot of things like that. And again, Google has put in some things. They're just doing something very recently, just within the last couple of months, as a date multiplier. So when you are advertising as a hotel on this, you can say, hey, for these lengths of stays and for these dates, I'll bid up somewhat, right? Because those are high. I've discovered, if I'm just making this up, an all-inclusive adults-only resort in Jamaica, they may discover that, hey, Fridays are a terrible day. A lot of people search, but they don't book, but Sundays, everybody books. So they can start tinkering with that and do a lot of testing, which is great to see what works better to save them money on their ad spend, but also to make it more efficient. And that works for everybody. It works for Google. It works for the brands.
So let's talk specifically about the aforementioned TripAdvisor.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting proposition. Steve Kaufer, CEO, has talked at length during earnings calls and with press interviews about the importance of that program to the kind of the evolution of TripAdvisor. As you said before, subscriptions have been around for a while. It's just this is a very high profile one. We've got eDreams have got their Prime subscription model in Spain and in Europe where they operate. I mean, what is it about subscriptions as not only as a revenue driver, but also as a marketing tactic? It's kind of an interesting move, wouldn't you say?
Well, the investment community loves recurring revenue streams. Number one, that's probably primary to a lot of it. But then there's another factor, which I think is consumer preference, right? I was speaking with a Wall Street analyst actually earlier this week, and both of us now have TripAdvisor Plus memberships, right? Because part of it is because of our work and what we do. We want to see what it's like to really use it and things like that. But we've had this conversation. I said, so wait, I've got a question for you. Are you now looking at TripAdvisor first when you go search because you have this membership? And she said, you know what? I think I am. And so I said, I think I am too, because I've spent the money. I've kind of made a commitment financially to it. And maybe that moves it up. Now, will I always book through them? No, I'm really pretty agnostic when it comes to booking channels. I apologize to my hotelier friends and airline friends, car rental friends on that. But, I'm looking, I put my consumer hat on and try to play the game and see what I can do to get the best price, just like most consumers do. So it's interesting. So I think with it, leading hotels of the world found this out years ago when they had their leaders club, because it cost $150 or so to join. You had to pay for a loyalty program. And that's the thing. All of these programs for the airlines and hotels and car rental companies, they are not loyalty programs. They are reward programs. They're very transactional. What gives true preference? And if you're going to put money down for a subscription, I think that tips things a little bit in Trip's favor.
And I think what's an important part of this is not only is it a financial investment, what they want it to be is an emotional investment as well.
Absolutely.
Which I think is the key part of this kind of, as we say, this emergence of subscription programs. And it ties them higher up in the funnel, which is another phrase that gets used a lot.
And it also ties into the Google perspective, because Google, especially with the free booking links, they wanted to have every hotel bookable, right? Because that just makes it a better platform, and not just that you search there and then go off somewhere else and do it. That puts them into the process and has people coming back, because they can kind of go end to end on their search and fulfillment of their booking. TripAdvisor has a lot of hotels and a lot of information, a lot of reviews. They've built up that, and what is it, 400 million or whatever. Pre-COVID, it was 400 million unique visitors a month. But again, Koffer, and I say, probably the smartest guy in the travel industry. He's pivoted that company. What is this, the fourth or fifth time? And you just don't see that across any industry, right? It's really remarkable. So by doing that, I think they came up with a win-win. And it's great for TripAdvisor, because the incentives for the subscribers, if you stay, because it's a fixed fee of $100 US, and they're doing coupons. I know someone who got a $75 off coupon, right? I got a $25 off coupon, which was enough. And I'm sure they're doing A/B testing to figure out what's the best deal to do that. But once you do that, since you have that fixed fee, if you stay a longer length of time at higher rated hotels and better hotels, that's a better product for you, because you're getting these discounts. Those are the type of guests almost every hotelier wants. The ones who spend a lot of money, stay at great hotels and stay a long time. So it basically rewards the consumer. And if Trip can keep doing things that keep incenting them, I think they'll keep developing that program. It could be very interesting.
And another one that's kind of re-emerged is flash sales, or they call them different things depending on the company, but in our world we just call them flash sales. I mean, booking.com has come back with it, and who can forget the glut of companies that came along about 11, 12 years ago, which were flash sale hotel sites. Secret Escapes is the one that's kind of gone the distance. Groupon got into this game, but those are coming back, kind of. I mean, and again, from a marketing perspective, it's a different perspective once again.
Well, and look at, when did that happen? 11 or 12 years ago. Oh, right after the global financial crisis, right? Dip in demand, coming out of it, and people looking at, hey, I'm looking for a deal. Maybe I don't have quite as much, disposable income. What can I do to really make the right thing? Now, it's a little bit different this time, because again, now that you have all the COVID issues, and is it a safe area, or what kind of experience are you going to have? Maybe you want to be away from a dense city center and things like that. Lots of other factors are very different. But the same thing after 9/11, right? You had all sorts of things that boomed up, and online travel agencies really kind of shifted the playing field to say, hey, look across all your options. Because again, in fairness to the hotels, when they say book direct, that's kind of if I'm going to Hilton, that's great, but should I want to check a Marriott? Well, yes, now I have to go try to book direct there. I need to go to Hyatt. I need to go, across all of them. That takes a lot of effort and work, unless you have preference, right? But again, most of those reward programs were fundamentally structured on converting employer business travel spend to personal leisure travel benefit for the
Yeah.
consumer.
Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting coming forward with COVID. If business travel is off, that's going to suddenly kind of lower that spend, and it's going to be a little bit more of the consumer saying, hey, if I'm paying my own money on this leisure trip and I'm not using my points that I accumulated from my employer, how does that work? Right? So that might not be quite as, quote, loyal, and it's not loyal, it's gamification, right? It's just use of those points to the best utility, right? Pure economics.
How do you think, Robert, this all kind of shakes out? I mean, you've referenced a couple of times now that some of these new business models have emerged at time of crisis, with financial crisis, attacks on the World Trade Center, and the one that we're still going through. Do they have longevity, or are they of a time and a place, and then we'll just go back to Booking Holdings and Expedia Group spending $13 billion a year on pay-per-click because they know that's something they're very good at?
No, they'll be around. I mean, Hotwire and Priceline's name your own price is kind of taken a back seat. Now, when there was very, very high demand, particularly in hotels, Hotwire started to get kind of choked off a little bit in terms of their supply. Those deep discounts weren't as available. But again, Expedia changed things up a little bit and said, well, here's everything. It isn't just the hot deals or whatever they call them, the super discount. It works a lot like hotels.com, but has kind of that extra, here's the one where you don't know the hotel until after you've booked. But also they've, from the hotelier perspective, changed the rules a little bit, because now all of a sudden they'll say, well, people who've booked, we guarantee it will be one of these two hotels. And you may see, well, wait, it says it's a 4-star hotel and that's a 3-star hotel and 4-star hotel. It's pretty obvious. Or now they have real photos of the hotels, which people are dragging into Google image search and going, I know the property, right? So not exactly the opacity that they started off with. And the hotels are a little bit, concerned about that. But again, those models will still work. There's some interesting ones though. And again, Inspirato was around certainly pre-COVID, $2,500 US a month, flat rate for unlimited stays at these, I think they had 300, 500 properties, something like that. Banyan Tree is doing something very interesting. These fixed price 7-night stay units that you can kind of use anywhere, which is, again, very clever. You got people committed to it. They don't know when they're going to travel or where, but you've bought a unit, so you can go do that. Maybe a little bit of risk that it's sold out or something, but, inspires you to book early. But then there are other ones. I mean, Margaritaville does some very clever stuff with their college ambassador program. They've got people out on college campuses going, hey, stay at Margaritaville. So all those things will continue to be innovative and people trying new things. But there's an incentive now because, again, you don't want to necessarily, and not to vilify Google, Google has a great business model, right? They do very well and consumers love it. And Google can stand behind that. Right, through all the government scrutiny and regulation, they go, people love this. We've organized this travel information. We've made it easy for them. What's the problem? And they go, well, you're too successful. So that's the thing. So the question is, how do you get more competition? And it's through innovation.
And last of all, I mean, do you envy, or are you quite glad that you're not in the kind of the marketing realm of a big travel company? Do you sense it's just a bit of a headache?
In some cases, yeah. I mean, budgets have been tightly constrained.
But I mean, the tactics and the discipline itself, it just seems to be ever more complicated.
Oh, it is. Absolutely. I mean, it's not A/B testing, it's multivariate testing. And mostly, particularly for hotels, it's the importance of getting your tech stack together so you can really handle all of this data and you don't have a bunch of siloed information that doesn't necessarily link up.
Okay.
But oh, no, I was going to say, I see two innovations coming down the pipe. One is, I believe, because partly I'm the co-chair of a work group on this for hospitality technology next generation, but believe there's going to be a unique hotel identifier, which will be a game changer for distribution that will really, instead of all these complex cross-reference tables, let the hoteliers say, this is my hotel, those are my payment systems. These are the payments I accept. These are the distribution channels I work with. And all of a sudden you get a lot of the noise out of the system. And then second is self-sovereign identity. And I think these two go hand in hand, where you have the individuals really being able to say, I control my data, I will share it with partners. And then all of a sudden, you, Kevin May, may be eligible for a variety of different rates and not need to know all those weird discount codes and enter one at a time. But you just search and you get the stuff that you're eligible for. So those, I think, will be big game changers, but that's probably 2-3 years on the horizon.
So marketers should look out for that in 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely.
So Robert Cole from RockCheetah and my comrade at PhocusWire, thank you so much for giving us your perspective on PhocusWire Pulse. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Always great talking to you.